So the big thing that makes it unconditional election is the fact that it doesn't matter what we do or don't do. It doesn't matter what we have done or have not done, that the election has happened before we ever lived, before any of us were ever created in eternity past. God unconditionally elected. And so it doesn't matter. And it was based off of his, they would say, his foreknowledge or his intimate knowing in a relational sense of us. And so as we are born, we are already elected. It doesn't matter what we do or don't do, we're going to be unconditionally elected. And so the rest then of Calvinism, of limited atonement, is for us. The irresistible grace will happen to us, we'll be drawn to it, and then we will eventually persevere with our faith because we were unconditionally elected before we even had any kind of took a breath, knew who we were, knew who God was, any of that kind of stuff. God said, I already had you, and I already have you secured that way, which sounds like a really awesome thing, right? It sounds like, oh, that's really great. Until you start thinking about the fact that there are scriptures where it says that God's desire is that no one perish, that all come to repentance. And then you have to go, wait a second, is that true? And it's a really hard place to be at, because if you're going to buy into the idea that God had already elected in eternity past, and before we were any person was ever created or born, he knew all of what was going to happen, and he ordained all that was going to happen, and then now he's limitedly atoned for all the people he's already elected. Does he really desire that all would come to repentance? Is he really patient in that, or not? And so these are some of the problem, and I'm sure there are apologetic ways to think through Calvinism when it comes to this kind of stuff, because I remember doing this kind of stuff, and it's been such a long time since I had to do it. But to me, it makes our picture of God a very different picture of God, and becomes very difficult to be able to say, well, God's not the author of evil. God's not the author of sin. God's not lying when he says that he really does want all to come to repentance, because he's the one who's sovereign and pushed the agenda anyway. So that becomes my bigger issue with unconditional election. Now, election, like I said, is a Christian doctrine, but I think there's different things going on than what the Calvinist does.